start up.
Okay. All right.
Hi, my
Okay.
name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be hosting Archery Talk 101, and we have Eric Newman on the line with us. We're going to talk with him about his archery journey. But before we get started, I want to let everybody know how you can listen to the podcast. You can go out to Spotify or any of the places you catch your normal podcasts, as well as you can go out to audible.com and search for Archery Talk 101 and listen to it there. And that's probably the easiest way to do it because you get notified when new ones come out. You can watch the podcast on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself, as well as you can um, watch it on my profile. Times I go live on my profile and catch that. But probably the best place to go is on the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group, because there we have a lot of archers that are bow techs. We got instructors. If you're having a problem or a question about something, go ahead and post it. If you want to take a video on your phone of you shooting, go ahead and do that and upload it, and we'll give you some advice on your shooting form, make you a little better shot. Well, now let's get on with the conversation with Eric, and we'll get this going. And Eric, how about if you introduce yourself and then tell us a little something about yourself?
Name's Eric Newman. I live in Odessa, Texas. I'm old, 57 years old. I've been married about 35 years, got two kids, three grandkids, and one on the way. Um, I got I started working for Loving Electric and Air Conditioning in 91. I now own the business. Probably in 95, I bought my first bow. It was a Browning Midas. From there, I went to a Proline Riptide. Then been from there, Botex 29, the Destroyer, Guardian, had several. Right now I'm shooting the Omen with the S2 cam. Probably the best ball I've ever shot for a short draw because I'm a 26.5 inch draw. I got a Matthews Lift X. I don't talk much about that one because Joel Maxfield likes to make fun of me. So, oh yeah. So that's actually it turned out to be a real good bow too. I got it down there because I'm using it for my 3D. I started shooting 3D last year. I've really enjoyed that. Not any good at it, but I do enjoy it. And probably, I don't know, I got into the physics side of archery probably in 2019. And I've just been digging hard from there. So doing a lot of testing. I've done testing for VIP archery, trifecta. I used to do some R&D for grizzly sticks. Um, I've done stuff for arrow manufacturers, collecting data. Now I'm doing some fletching testings for Fletch. That one's turned out pretty interesting. Um, just doing things like that. I do check dynamic efficiency, actually mechanical efficiency. I've run some tests like that, tests for strings, and just whatever anybody needs, I look at it, and if I can do it, I just do it. So try to follow the ASTM standards on just about everything I do. That way, everything is set. So if anybody wants to repeat my test, they can repeat it. Um, Everything I do is on paper, so everything's listed. So everything can be repeated. I don't do videos because I'm afraid I'm going to sound like a hick. So I'm not big on videos yet, but I've been told I need to. So I'll probably get with a guy, Corey Haas, and he'll help me out with the videos and stuff. So and just keep going. I got a web page at P&L Testers. I've got maybe 1% of my papers are posted on it. I've got, I don't know how many papers I've written over the last 2, 3 years. Probably 80% of them I've never even released. So I just have them stored. But, I do a lot of work with Joel Maxfield. He's introduced me to people like Dave Holt. He's been around forever. Um, he's blessed me with, he hunts in Africa every year. So the last 3 years, and this will be the fourth year, I've been able to put his data on paper. So we've got information and data collected for about 90 animals killed in Africa. So that's all on my webpage so that and people can look at that and see what's going on. Um, and we just talk a lot about physics, aerodynamics, FOC. There's a lot of misconceptions about that. And as a matter of fact, I just released a paper on about a week ago on misconceptions there. I've got a calculator right now I'm working on to help people look at the center pressure and the static margin to help people understand why we look at FOC. Still working the bugs out of that one. I don't know if I'll do anything with it. I've already gave it to a few people to play with, and that may be just where I go with it. I may not worry about it, but pretty interesting when you look at stuff like that. So, and I guess we can even look at some of that if you can share on Zoom. I can even pull up some of the papers and show what some of it looks like. Um,
Yeah, you can share or I can share it for you. Let's see here.
I see a share button.
Yeah, if you click the share button, then it should ask me to allow you to share. It's easier if you
Send,
run than me to try to run it. Okay,
okay.
there you go. Now you can go ahead and share your screen, and then it's a little easier because I can share it, but if you share it, then you can kind of direct where it goes. And
So
so
if I close this screen, not you, but the other one behind me, can I get into my files?
should be able to.
Okay. Well, let's see what happens. Probably hang up on you. All right. So I guess, yeah, I can still see you. Can you see what I'm doing?
Not yet. What you have to do, this screen you shared, just drag where
Uh-huh.
that file is over that screen.
Okay. I may not be
Or
able to do that. All right. Let's see this. No, I
yeah,
didn't let me
should
do that.
yeah.
So,
Okay. Well,
so
you can always stop sharing and then when you click the share button, it should give you an option of what to share. And then you can
okay.
either share an application or you can share your screen, and whatever you have on your screen
Oh,
will show.
okay. I apologize about this. I've never used this, so video file. So I probably won't worry about it. What I did a big test for fletch on that new vane, the Quad
Yeah,
X. It was designed by Michael Braden. I did a test looking at it for rotation per second. So I did a test between a 1 degree, a 3 degree, and a 5 degree. Of course, that part of the paper is pretty easy to understand. You know, increase helical, you increase rotations per second.
great.
Then I went in to looked at stabilization, and what I did there is I took the 1 degree and I forced a tear. So I moved my rest. Is all I did. I didn't do it with my hand. I moved the rest out, and then I measured that tear as I walked back, and then I repeated it with the 3 degree and the 5 degree. And what I found, the 5 degree recovered much faster. In the rotations per second, I actually hit 7 rotations in about 10 yards, a little over 10 yards with the 5 degree. It was almost 14 yards with the 3 degree, and it was over 25 yards with the 1 degree. Now, 1 degree is what most people factories flex their fletchings at. So what I showed there in that stabilization test is the recovery rate was so much better with the 5 degree that I saw I saw no, in my opinion, is there's no reason to be fletching less than 5 degrees. So then I started worried about drag because that's the big part that everybody talks about that increase helical, you increase drag. So since I got into 3D, I decided I would test only at 60 yards and I tested velocity using a lab radar. And what I found was between a 1, 3, and a 5 degree, there was less than a 1 foot per second difference in the helical. So I had no velocity loss difference between a 5 degree all the way to a 1 degree. So I saw zero con to not shooting 5 degrees. Now it is a short vane, it's 2.2 inches, it's only 0.4 tall. I haven't tested any bigger vanes yet, larger vanes. That's coming. So, because I'm assuming somewhere I'll start seeing some drag, but with that vane out to 60 yards, I'm not seeing any drag difference. So I'll probably do an accuracy test to see if I see a difference in accuracy. But for 3D, 5 degree recovers much faster. So I'm seeing no difference in that with that vane. I tested that at 285 feet per second. I split the difference in 3D from 280 to 290. And like I said, I did it to 60 yards. I just went 10 yards past 50 yards is what I did. Um, I'll probably try to go a little further, but you got a problems with the lab radar. After 60 yards, it starts getting a little finicky. So I'll probably have to take more than 6 shots. I'll probably go to 10 to 12 shots and see. But if it gets where it's not, if the deviation's too big, I'll back off and won't use that data. That's the problem with the lab radar. So I know a lot
Yeah.
of people like using them. Yes, sir.
Now, have you ever thought about testing versus feathers?
I know, years ago, it's funny. I shot feathers probably in the early 90s on aluminum arrows. I quit shooting feathers because I had a buck come in. As I was drawing, I hung them feathers on my mask. And when it made that noise, the buck was gone.
Oh,
So, yeah.
yeah.
So I decided at that point I wasn't good enough to shoot with feathers. So I went to vanes. So that was the good
I
old days.
I still shoot feathers.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Four-inch
uh,
feathers on my carbon arrows.
oh, there you go. There you go. So, yeah, I remember the aluminum days. We even shot plastic inserts, trying to keep as much weight off them arrows so we could shoot fast. And I remember when Beeman first came out, I was shooting Beemans. Well, I was having a hard time keeping them little small Beemans in the target. They just blow through them. Of course, you had the big O outserts on them and everything.
Yeah.
I was in Brady, Texas, and talking to a bow shop down there, and I was asking what targets he shot. And he told me, I said, that's the same one I got. I said, I can't get my arrows in it. He told me, he said, there's no way your arrows are blowing through it. So I told him I had my bow. He took me in the back of his shop. Well, I bounced my arrow around his shop for 10 seconds after it blew through his target. And he said, I guess you're right. I said, yes, sir. So, but I shot them for a long time. I loved them. So I shoot Black Eagle now. So,
Yeah, I know when I was down in PSC that down at dealer school, they was telling a story where PSC had done a test between vanes and feathers, straight fletch and helical fletch, and what's the speed loss between vanes and feathers. And they found that the feathers were faster initially, but the vanes maintained their speed longer, less drag. Feathers more drag.
sure.
And then they found that as you put more helical on them, the rotational speed, once the rotational speed exceeded the forward speed, they dropped like a parachute.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of that parachute, that's just it's a spin to velocity ratio. Because once an arrow comes up, it's usually going to stay fairly close to that spin rate. And then once your arrow slows down past that ratio you're talking about, yeah, it'll just parachute right onto the ground. So most people won't see it because we're all shooting, 100 yards or less. And most generally, you don't see that with fletching. It's not vanes anyway. So, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that was been decades ago when they did that test, and
Oh,
it's like
sure.
that was quite interesting, and fletching 4-inch feathers or vanes onto a little skinny carbon shaft. You, I use a helical jig, but you can't get much offset because they won't wrap around the shaft. You can't
Right.
wrap them around, so you got to keep both the front and the back on the shaft, so you're not going to get a big 5-degree offset on a 4-inch vane or feather because it's just too long.
Yeah. I still have that issues. I use a jig that I use for measuring my helical. It's actually for machining. But even then, I have a hard time getting past 5 degrees. Even with a 2-inch vane, it doesn't want to. The jigs, the vane people that use, I'm using a Vane Master Pro. I can get a little more, but I got to go past that 5 degree point on their deal. But yeah, their jig won't quite get you to 5 degrees. So I like using their jig though. It's very easy and very repeatable. So of course I've got a bits and I think everybody's got a bits at some time or another.
Yeah,
So
I've still got 8 of them left.
yeah,
and,
I think I
and
got two.
and 4 or 5 of the BPE ones, the plastic ones, Oh, when I
Yeah.
had my shop, I had a dozen of those. I had a Joe Jan that, does
Mm-hmm.
six at one time. And then I had my eight Bitzenbergers and with the straight clamp and the helical clamp, and then the two different receivers, one for the cock feather down and one for out. Because traditional you want out, and compounds with the rest you want them down or up, depending on which one you're using. And you know, I kept all the Bissenburgers when I closed my shop, and I sold a couple of the BPEs because I really don't use them. Being
Mm-hmm.
plastic, the glues and stuff build up on them, and
Yeah.
at least the Bissenburgers you can scrape them off and not really hurt the jig too much.
Gee. Did you ever on your clamps, did you ever go in and reshape them so that they would lay better on the arrow?
No, I didn't ever go through and change those.
Angel?
Um,
Yeah, I think it was I don't remember his name. Is Jerry from South Shore. I think he retired some years back. I was talking to him on the phone, and what he had me do because I was having problems with the jig, he said he had me lay it flat on the arrow, and where the air gap is, I started shaving that clamp until that there was no air gap.
right.
So that
Yeah.
helped me lay it on there better. Yeah. So that's what I did all them. Now that Veinmaster Pro, it works different. So you just got to play with it a little bit to get them on there. So I wish they had a hole in the bottom of their jig. So when I'm trying to see if the backside of the feather is on the arrow or the veins on the arrow, I can see it. You're trying to, can't quite eyeball it very well. So they need to cut a window in there somewhere
Yeah.
or
So
put
you
a
can.
mirror on it. Yeah.
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 Maybe
So
modify them yourself then, right?
yeah, well, sometimes I'll just use a mirror, or sometimes I just stick one on there and just know if it's not on there, I'll just waste a vein. So
Yeah.
play with it a little bit. So, but
Yeah.
testing veins has been real fun. Like I said, I probably got a half a dozen more I've got to test. Uh, the one I really want to test is the boning that Atlas versus the Blazer. Because I was at the ATA show, I was talking to the guy, and he was telling me something that they saw between them two veins, and so I'm going to test it because I want to see what they're talking about. So, because they were talking about the longer vein actually held its velocity better, and I want to see it's got to be drag in there that's causing that. And I want to see what's going on with that vein. So that may be a very interesting thing to test out too.
Yeah,
So
it could be the texture on it, on the
could
the
be.
the plastic that it's made out of.
Could be. So far, like I said, I've shot a bunch of different veins. I've gone back to fletch. I shot them for years. Used to shoot that old 418 long 4 incher, and
Yeah,
yeah. So, but I've done a bunch of different veins, just playing, shooting. Even at 3D last year for my first year, I tried all kinds of things. I went big veins, little veins. I shot one vein, two vein, three veins. Just seeing what I could see difference. Actually, my best score, and I don't shoot very well. My best score, I shot with two fletch.
oh yeah,
So yeah, so it was probably luck, but I mean, I can see it working. It was working its tail off trying to keep there, but I shot it did pretty good. I wouldn't shoot a broadhead with a two vein, two fletch, but
yeah.
for
Hard enough to get a broadhead to fly straight, let alone with only two
uh,
fletchings.
oh yeah. So the problem I have sometimes, hell, I was testing and I had to repeat some testing. I pulled one of the arrows out and I shot and I missed my target. And I thought, what the heck did I do? And I looked at my sight and everything. I looked over and my lab radar said 344 feet per second. So I looked at that and I thought, how in the heck? And I thought, forgot to put my field point back in. I'd
Oh,
swapped arrows. So I had to go find that arrow in the neighbor's yard. Yeah. So good thing is I got 5 acres, so it don't go very far. So
no. Yeah, when you get 5 acres, it makes it a little bit safer to shoot.
oh, it does. So yeah, in testing, I've screwed up a few times. I was running a test and got in a hurry and dry fired one of my bows one time because I wasn't paying attention. My lab radar turned off, so I reached over to reset it and drew my bow. But as I reset it, I didn't load my arrow, and I just reached over to look at my radar and popped that dang release. And I thought, that PSC sounded funny. So it
Yeah.
didn't do any damage. It didn't do any damage. So you can usually
They,
get away with 1 or 2 dry fires before they tear up.
Yeah, yeah, they're pretty good at being able to take one or
Oh,
two, I wouldn't do it on purpose, but
oh no.
it does cause a problem.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I heard one story. I don't. Sometimes you hear stories that may or may not be true, but Pete Shepley was at some match someplace, and he shot his bow twice as many as everybody else because he dry fired it in between shooting. He'd dry fire and then shoot, dry fire and shoot, dry fire and shoot. Prove how tough his bows were.
Jeff Bozarth. Yeah. I got to meet him at the ATA 2 years ago. He's an
Oh yeah,
interesting gentleman. Yes, he is. So very interesting. So real nice. I met
oh
I think it was his daughter as well. So, but yeah, I had a old APA M5, and I don't know how to say his name, Nabal or something like that. Told him what I was doing one day, and he told me, well, you voided that warranty, and I wasn't too worried about it. I was shooting a 257 grain arrow out of it. At my draw length, I was over 340 feet with it at 70 pounds. It was a little loud, but I was still running 80% dynamic efficiency, so I was still transferring a lot of energy into that arrow, so I wasn't too worried about it. Now, I didn't shoot it a lot, probably 20, 30 times, and then I went back to my other arrows, but I did it to prove a point, is what I did.
yeah.
So, yeah,
Gather the data and
yeah,
we can show okay, you can do it. Is it really safe to do it a lot?
yeah.
No. I wouldn't go
No,
out and shoot hundreds of arrows at that
no,
because it's just not gonna take it.
no. Most generally, if you can keep above 80% on a dynamic efficiency, you're doing okay. I mean, you still got bows right now, even today, that are shooting 82 and 83%. So, the only thing you got to worry about with a light arrow is not getting your mod screws come loose or something. You'll tear things up. So you need to make sure everything's staying tight.
Right. A little more
But
vibration in them.
yeah, you'll know pretty quick because it'll rattle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, when they
yeah,
start rattling, it's a
yeah.
sign that something's neat coming loose. And
Something's fixing to happen. So oh yeah.
well,
So
and one little trick I learned many, many years ago was if you have trouble with a bolt loosening up, pull it out, put a wax on it, and put it back in. You're gonna get
mhm.
it tighter, it's gonna stay tight, and it's not gonna come loose on you.
Yeah. You know, I probably could have done that in my old that old pro line I had. Of course, them bows, when you shot them, you had to mark the bolts because about every third, fourth shot, you had to put it back because they would rotate. And them bows were loud. I actually took it apart and glued a t-shirt, cut a piece of t-shirt and put it in the limb pocket, trying to get that bow not so loud. Because down in a valley, if you were shooting it, it'd sound like a 22 Magnum when it went off.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, it was loud. I killed with it, but yeah, it was loud. So that was a fun bow. I actually taught myself to shoot that bow at 29 and a half inches because I was chasing speed.
oh,
And so I'm surprised I didn't take my ear off, but
yeah,
yeah. So, but it was fun. I used a red dot on that bow. Um, Politan. I don't know if that's still even around anymore. An old Politan type setup with a Starlight red dot scope on it. I think he's the one that took over the lever arm. I can't think of them bows name right fast. Old lever arm bows. I think he took that over, but I hunted with a red dot scope for years. So I loved it. Of course, I only shot 20 yards, so I didn't need anything
yeah,
different. So yeah, I still like shooting up close. I still like under 30. I want that animal to see me. So
yeah,
yeah, I want it to know I'm coming. But yeah, I don't shoot long distance. I'm not real big at long distance. So
yeah. My first deer was 40 yards, and then after that, I don't think I've shot one under or over 20.
yeah.
Most of them are 10 to 15.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
try to
Yeah,
set up
mine
for
are,
20-yard shots, and they just don't pay attention, and they come in closer.
yeah. Oh yeah. So I've shot a few. I shot just an old Texas dog goat. I shot him at about 90 yards. I shot a turkey one time at about 65. I'm sure it was luck, but I still got it, so I didn't care.
Yeah,
Uh, I squawked a chicken at about 100, went right over his head. That was kind of a funny shot, but it's just old chicken out there running around on the guy's ranch. He let me shoot at it, so but he didn't think I was gonna get close. That's what it was, but That was at a Thompson Temple Ranch. We go down there to
Yeah.
go goat hunting. Yeah. So goats are fun to shoot. They're easy. So if you want to go killing, goats go goat hunting. They're good for kids. Take kids goat hunting like that. So because you can get real close. So but uh I still like hunting. I don't know, can I say a name of a place I hunt a lot at? Did I get
Sure.
in trouble? So I
No.
like to hunt at a place here in Texas called Diamond Sea. Guy's name is Skylar Stark. He's fantastic. I've been hunting there about 15 years. I've probably gone 25 times. People will tell you that hunting high fence is easy. I'll tell you, them animals, they know you're there, and it ain't easy. I've probably been skunked, I don't know, half a dozen times, trying to get, because what I do is I call him and tell him what I want to hunt. He'll send me pictures, and I'll pick the one I want, and then that's the one I hunt. So if nothing else comes in, then I don't shoot. A few years ago, I was down there with a guy named Rob Nielsen. I think he's the president of that Ashby Foundation. I was down there for about 4. I went for 2 days and ended up 4 days and still couldn't get on. It was a big old Catalina,
Yeah.
damn goat. Yeah, the only time I even got close to him, it was dark. I could see him sitting out there, and he's about 20 yards. And but I couldn't tell how he was standing. But I could hear the guide coming. So I thought, well, I'll shoot him when the guide turns the corner. His headlights will hit that goat, and I'll shoot him. Well, as soon as he turned the corner and the headlights hit that goat, he broke and run. I thought, you sorry dog. So 4 days later, I went home empty-handed. But, but that's a fun place. I've shot, I don't know, I've killed 3 bison. I killed a zebu. That's a pretty weird animal.
Oh
It's
yeah.
a Zebu. It's a miniature Brahma bull. So it
Oh
looks
yeah.
just like a Brahma. Yeah, it looks just like a Brahma bull, but they're about 40, 42 inches tall, between 400 and 500 pounds. Now they're tough. Matter of fact, the guide was fussing when he was skinning him out because he said that hide was thick. I shot that one. I didn't do real good on my first shot. I was nervous because he was looking at me. There was 2 of them, and they were looking, and they're pretty mean. And so I shot him a little far back. Now I was shooting about a 430 grain arrow with a VIP mechanical broadhead, and he was at about 30 yards. I was a little further back than I wanted, but but he turned and went away from me. I just actually stood up, is what I did, and it was enough to get him to turn from me. I worked my way through the brush, got back on him about 20 yards. I actually got behind a mesquite because now, since he's wounded, I didn't want him to charge me. So I was sitting
Right.
behind a mesquite and I shot under. Now, the guide was standing there with me, and that second shot, it sounded like a 2x4 breaking when that arrow hit him. And that guide said, "Oh, your arrow didn't penetrate very well." And I said, "I don't guess it matters. He's laying right there dead." So he went 40 yards, fell over, and what I did, I center punched one of them big ribs, and it snapped that rib. I mean, it sounded like a 2x4 when it broke. But I did it with a 430 grain arrow. But I did hit him with about 75 foot-pounds of kinetic energy too. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah, no problems. So I've killed red stag, fallow, red hinds, uh, um, sika, axes. That's a hard animal sometimes. They're pretty jumpy. Pigs. Oh, I've killed lots of pigs. Hell, my best pig was 214 pounds. Probably shouldn't say this. It was dark. I was drunk and standing in my underwear. Worked my way down to a feeder, and he was standing under the feeder in his head in the water, blowing bubbles to get the corn to come up. And I smoked him. He went 10 yards. And the good thing is he went right straight to the road. So I thought, oh, that'd be easy. So, but he had a shield on him that was probably inch and a half thick. And I shot him with an arrow sub 500 with an old VAP 175 grain 3 blade, one of them long blade, long, yeah. Now it didn't go all the way through. It was poking out his other side, but and yet it was a pretty tough animal. But that's probably been my biggest pig. So other than that, I've killed a crap ton of turkeys. So yeah, I probably out of about 160 animals I've killed, 40 of them probably been turkeys. Where I hunt, they're not as big as they used to be because pigs showed up. But before that, they were like rats.
They're
So
all over the place.
I had a winter roost on my property. I got 100 acres down there and we got some oaks on one end. Had 300 birds easy in it. So I killed 4 a year,
Yeah.
So hmm yeah. Killed a bunch of them with the old Zwickey broadhead.
Oh yeah.
I love Zwickeys. If somebody was to tell me right now that you could only have one broadhead, and that's the only broadhead you could ever shoot the rest of your life, I'd go with a Zwickey because I can straighten it on a rock and I can sharpen it on the rock if I need to.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's when we used to hunt with them, I to sharpen them, I use what I call a Harvey to sharpen. Now, Harvey is my hunting buddy, but he can take them Zwickeys, and when you're done with them, if you look at it, your eye will bleed. He can get them that sharp. It was crazy what he can do with them. So I love Zwickeys. Killed a bunch of animals with Zwickeys. Uh, so people overlook little broadheads like that. I think I had $5 a piece in them. I got
Yeah.
tons of them
They're
stuck in
fairly
trees.
simple.
Oh, very simple. Very simple. I can't tell you. I got a dozen of them stuck in mesquite trees down there throughout my property.
Oh yeah.
You know. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, speaking
Uh,
of Zwickies here, I
hmm.
can share the screen here.
Yeah. No
Here's the
mercy.
broadheads.
Yep. Yeah. I shot the Delta, which I think was 130 grain, and then I used 100 grain in adapter. So I was running in that 230, 240 range. I loved them. Shot the crap out of them.
Expert for a heavy broadhead.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I got into that in around 2015. I made a bad shot and on a whitetail deer. And I did the typical thing. I instead of blaming myself for making a bad shot, I blamed my equipment. So I went,
Yeah.
yeah. So
That's
I
kind
went
of
to look.
normal.
Oh yeah. So I went to looking, researching, and I actually found Ashby's reports. So I started reading and I started building arrows based off of Ashby's reports. Now, I never got real heavy. 525 was probably max, but I based a bunch of my stuff for a long time off of that. I didn't kill another white-tailed deer for over 5 years. I went and I did kill some exotics and hogs, but I really went to looking because I didn't want to wound another deer. It bothered me that bad. So,
Yeah.
um, so I got into you know, everybody makes a joke about the Ashby Kool-Aid. Well, I didn't just make an Ashby Kool-Aid cup. I jumped in and went all the way to the bottom. Um, I got to meet Ashby. Very, very nice guy. He only lives 4 hours from me. So, really, very nice guy. But I got into physics in 2019 through a guy through Archery Talk, goes by Ugly Joe. That changed my outlook a lot. So I pulled away from the real heavy arrows. I say real heavy, like I said, I never shot more than 525. Um, I do have some still good broadheads. I have one called the Nanook that Grizzly Stick used to make. It's about 315 grain. I got three of them left. They'll never be shot because they don't make them anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got that one put up. I've got a 650 grain of Bishop broadhead. Actually, the Ranch Fair gave that one to me. I don't know, 2017, 18, somewhere in there. I got that one put up because I don't want to lose it. That one's fun to pull out in front of people because they freak out because it's a hunk of metal. But I backed out of that part, and I'm in I don't know, my last bison I killed was a 386 grain arrow with a mechanical broadhead on it. So I'm in that 400 on average now, back to there. So, it's just one of them deals. I went light, went heavy, went back to light, and realized my mistake was not my equipment, it was me. I screwed up. Just took me a few years to figure that out.
That's
So,
normally the case. It's not the equipment most of the time. It's the shooter.
mhm. Well, when I met Dave Holt, golly, I don't remember, 2021 or something like that. I actually went to Colorado and met him at his house. And that was some of the things that I was talking to him about. And because he was talking about shot placement. And I said, well, how do you guarantee shot placement? And he said, get closer. And I said, do what? He says, if you're not in your shot placement, you're shooting too far. Get closer. And he does. He hunts between 15 and 20 yards. And he kills a lot, a lot of animals.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, and he's killing animals even up in the elands. So I don't know how big an eland can get, 1,000, 1,200 pounds. He shoots the big ones. It's funny because he's killing them with a 475 grain arrow and a dang inch and a half wide rage broadhead. Yeah. That's broadhead I haven't shot yet, so I'm scared to. So, but it's not so much I'm scared to. It's that Joel making fun of me because I have to admit that he might be right. So
Yeah, that could be it.
yeah. So, oh yeah, he's a character. I don't know if you ever met Joel. He's funny. He's a really
No,
good guy. Yeah, he's very knowledgeable on everything. I don't know if hell he posted it on Facebook, so I guess it's no big deal. He just got back out of South America down there, water buffalo hunting. I don't know how big it was. I do know it was huge. So it was probably in that 2,500 pound range. He shot 3 times, 3 different broadheads, and I'm assuming they were probably telling me to do that. He's shooting a 570 grain arrow, complete pass through on his first shot with an iron wheel. He shot it and buried it to the fletchings with I don't remember which broadhead. It was a mechanical. He shot it at 90 yards. Now, Joel is a shooting son of a gun. So, I mean, he's got 3 arrows stuck in this thing at 3 different yardages. I'm sure, like, I know in them big animals, they tell you if he's still standing, shoot him again.
yeah,
Follow up. I promise you, Joel's first shot, it was it would have died, no problems. But, you know, if it takes a few minutes, go ahead and just get another arrow in him, I'm sure. I haven't talked to Joel about it, so I don't know exactly what he was doing. He may have just been playing with arrows. I don't know. So, but what he did, and like I said, he went to a 570 grain arrow. He just upped his bow weight, took it to 82 pounds. I think he's around 100 foot-pounds of kinetic energy. Wasn't no problem getting through that big old bull. So,
yeah.
and it was a big one. Yes, sir. So, um, real knowledgeable. And I got to meet other people because of Joel. I met Tim Gillingham. He's a character. So, if you ever meet him, he's a tall son of a gun. So he makes fun of me. So, oh yeah. Yeah, he makes a lot of fun. Calls me Ashby Jr. because I used to give him a hard time about light and heavy arrows, but he likes to stand up. Now he'll slouch for me sometimes, but even slouching, he's still freaking 2 feet taller than me. So, you know, we were at Vegas this year, and he was having a hard time sitting in them chairs watching them guys at the last shoot, and I was giving him a hard time. I told him I said I can make you more comfortable. I said I'll just cut your legs off at your knees. And I said, you won't have this problem. And he looks over at me and he said, yeah, but my arm lengths will still be longer than yours. So, all right, jerk.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, yeah, he's fun. So I like giving him a hard time. So just rile him up if I can. No,
It's
it's
only
kind of
fun,
like
right?
oh, absolutely. Because I promise you, he don't cut anybody any slack. So, uh, and I don't blame him. If I was probably him, I wouldn't either. If I could shoot like that, I definitely wouldn't be giving anybody a slack. So, uh, I've never met Levi. I'd like to meet him one day. They say he's one shooting son of a gun, but I've never seen him at the ATA, so I don't know. But I'd like to talk to them all about FOC and all the misconception about FOC because they all freak out about FOC, and that's a fun one because I think FOC got a bad rep because they started talking about how increasing FOC increases penetration. And actually, physics wise, it does if you look at the math. I haven't seen it. Even Ashby will tell you that it doesn't improve breaching the bone. It's after it gets past the bone. So the mass is what you need there. Um, I've shot, oh gosh, I've shot all the way to 30% FOC. No problem. I mean, but if your arrow's already passing through the animal, how do I know if it improved?
Right.
So yeah. So I did get into aerodynamics. There's a guy out there named Daryl Barnett. Very smart. He was going by the nickname Rocket Man. I think he was involved with Ranch Ferry. He hadn't been on there in a while. Very intelligent. Of course, that's what he did for a living. So I've worked things with him over the years. Um, I released a paper the other day talking about because people were talking about how FOC doesn't mean anything because they used to shoot aluminum arrows with less than 10% and they flew fine. And that's actually right. That's correct. Um, there's when you look at FOC, you got your FOC is your balance point. Actually, FOC is the location of the center of the gravity of that arrow. And I don't know who decided to call it what they did, but it's just location of center of gravity. Then you have what's called the center of pressure, which is it'll be somewhere around your vein area, and that's where all the points or your sums or your pressures are at. In between that, you have the static margin. And that static margin is what you should probably look at, because if it's not in the right spot, your arrow won't be stable. So even a 10% arrow or even a 5% arrow, if you're shooting back in the old days when we were shooting the 4-inch feathers, your static margin was probably large enough, nobody had a problem. So it was no big deal. So what has happened to us though over the years, we've gone to shooting much faster. We've gone to shooting little veins. So what happens is now we're still running, some people are still building that 10% FOC, but our static margin has closed up. So so we're stable with certain broadheads and other broadheads we're not. And you see that a lot because somebody will say broadhead A shoots great, but broadhead B doesn't. Well, that more than likely, and it could be a tuning issue too. But a lot of times what that is broadhead B's got more lift. So it's trying to steer. So what you can do is you can change your vanes, go to a larger vane, increase your vane or the height, and move that center of pressure so you make your static margin larger. And it'll correct, and then you got stable flight. Or the easy thing to do is add more weight on the front. You just want to play with that static margin of what you're doing. And I think that's probably where the misconception comes in with FOC, is because everybody wants to say it doesn't matter. I can shoot low and it's right. Well, that's exactly right. The FOC number really doesn't mean much. It's that static margin. Where is that gap or that difference between the two? Is it in the right spot? If it is, your FOC don't matter. You can shoot zero FOC if you want. So it's just all about stabilization. Um, I wish Easton would come out and do some more study about that and change their chart up a little bit. But they won't talk to you about it. I've done tried. They don't have time to mess with people like me. So
So you've got
the
to run
problem,
your own test.
yeah, well, FOC is hard to test because the problem you got is you're also changing the reaction. So of an arrow. So like a lot of your target shooters, you'll see them, they'll be running 150 grain and then they'll go to a 250 grain on the front and their group tightens up. So they're changing, so they'll increase that. So two things happen is you've increased your static margin because you moved your center of gravity forward, but you're changing how that arrow reacts as well. So which one corrected the issue? Was it increasing the static margin or was it the change in the reaction of the arrow? There's no way to know it. And it's almost impossible to build two arrows that are identical in every way, except FOC, and to test that. I've looked at it. One of these days I'll try, but I don't know if it's worth messing with or not. So I don't know. It's hard to do. I might be able to use a spine program, like I was at one on Target or something, and play with it enough that I could build two arrows that supposedly, according to the program, would have the same reaction. And I might be able to do it that way.
Yeah.
But again, about half the test I do, people don't care anyway. It's pretty much, well, I get math heavy. The problem with it, I get people come at me and tell me there's too much math, and I laugh when they do that because you can go on YouTube and there's a guy named Jared Spencer, PhD. He's got about 18 videos on physics with archery. Uh, my math looks like I'm trying to figure out 2 plus 2 when you look at his. His math is unbelievable. Uh, there's another guy, James Parks. I think he's out of Australia. He's got some papers out there yeah, it makes my math look like nothing. So I people just I don't know. I don't want to say anything tacky about people, but this new generation, the learning has gone away. We don't
Yes.
learn, you know, people don't learn. They don't read. I do everything in paper because I still believe it. Hell, I'm 57 years old. I still believe in reading, you know. But we do things that make us lazy. These phones here, you rely on them so much, like calculator. I used to do math in my head. I caught myself the other day doing some math, and I reached over there and I put 10 times 10 in my dang calculator. So when it spit up 100, I looked at it, I said, "You stupid," you know. But we're all getting lazy.
Yeah, I
So,
used to do math in my head, but quite a bit,
mhm,
and nice about doing it in your head is you can catch real quick, something doesn't look right,
mhm,
even if you're writing down on paper, it's like that don't look right. That's doesn't make sense in my brain. It's like, oh yeah, you wrote it down
yeah.
wrong or something, and
Oh yeah, yeah. I
it's
use Excel a lot for that to help
right,
me. Yeah, I've written all kinds of papers. I've got stuff on measuring force and everything. And what I do is I'll do, and I've started to cheat now, but I used to go out and research all the formulas, figure them out, put them in Excel, and go to work in them. And it would take me a while. Now I use AI a lot of times because AI is nothing but a search engine, but it's fast.
right.
So it's, so instead of me going out and researching and finding 20 different websites and trying to build things together, I let AI do it. And then I go back and take it back to my Excel and then I start working the equations because AI doesn't do math very well. Or ChatGPT for the service I pay for doesn't do math very well. So it makes
Yeah.
mistakes. So you
Well,
got to
and
know what you're looking at.
yeah. If it comes up wrong and you don't know it comes up wrong, you're going to believe it.
Yes,
And
yes.
Chat GPT, I've been I started using that when it first come out.
Mm,
And then now Microsoft Copilot has come out. I use
yep.
that a lot. Uh, I, I'll use that a lot for a lot of things. And
Mm,
you can actually go into um, WhatsApp, and there is a section in there that you can actually use to evaluate multifamily properties or apartment complexes.
hmm.
It's set up to do a lot of that.
A
And
lot
if
of
you don't use that part of it, you try and tell it, it's like, no, it doesn't understand what you're trying to tell it. But if you use that part that's been trained how to do that, you just say, hey, I got this thing, tell me information about this place. Like, is this um, a good place to invest? And it'll go through and it'll tell you, here's the different economic outcome and different stuff. And, then you of course have to, verify a lot of stuff, but,
Oh, sure, sure.
it'll write papers and stuff for you. And, um,
I help it. I get it to help me do that. Because what I'll do is I'll write my papers, but I don't even format them anymore. I'll write my papers out and then I'll just download it into chat and tell it to format it in a white paper for me.
yeah.
And then I let it do the formatting for me. I don't even mess with formatting anymore. And then I got to use Grammarly because I can't spell with flip. So then I go into Grammarly and start checking all my spelling and punctuations and stuff. Because if you leave it up to me, I'll write 18 paragraphs and there'll never be a period one in it. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So,
and
but
and I use it a lot because I've actually got AI running that's doing a summary of what we're
uh-huh.
talking about because I've struggled before I get done with the podcast, and then it's like, what all did we talk about? I forgot. So
Oh
now I
yeah.
let the AI run do that, and then I actually use Microsoft Copilot, and I'll say, write a description for this podcast, and then I'll put the text in from the summary, and it gets a description, and it sometimes they're kind of flowery and stuff, and you got to back that down. ChatGPT is real good at being real flowery stuff, and I say, no,
Hmm.
don't write. I don't want a flowery thing. They'll get kind of go overboard on stuff, and then I'll say, generate me. Um, some tags for the YouTube video. General list of tags, and of course I generally put in my own in there, and then put some of those in. Some of them I got to take them out because they don't make sense. But at least I got an idea of what's going on, and
Valid. Yeah. Yeah.
so you can use that a lot of stuff. There's some programs that were out there pretty good. I remember, it was probably about 20 years ago. There was a program I had that I could go in, it print a sight tape for me. So I'd enter in how fast the arrow was, what it weighed, the distance between where the arrow was and the peep was at full draw, how long the arrow was, what kind of fletching I was using, um, and then it'd go through and it'd print out a sight tape. And on that sight tape, print, like, okay, how would you shoot 5 feet? You had a target at 5 feet. What pin would you use?
At five
Most people,
feet.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. At 5 feet, I was, well, you go the closer. I just sight down arrow. Have you ever done that before? No. Well, how you know what you're going to hit? And when you think about it, was on mine, I was on a platform, had a gator 5 feet away. I had to bend way down. And on mine, I knew on my sight tape how I had to shoot 5 feet. So I picked that number, nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. At 70 pounds, shooting, by 280 feet per second with you know, probably a 370 grain arrow, is fairly fast. Um, you could probably guess what pin I had to use.
Well, I'll tell you, we did one at one of the 3D shoots, and I shot it, hit the 12, backed up. One of the guys shot and he missed. He said, "What pin did you use?" I said, "At this distance, I used my 40." So now at
I used,
8 yards, I can still use my 20 pin at 8 yards, but once I start getting up there, oh yeah. So I think I used my 40. What it was.
I had to use my 70-yard pin.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that.
Well, it, at at all those numbers, that's what my chart, because I had my chart. It's like 5 feet, 70
Yeah,
yards, 70
it's cool.
yards, nailed it.
Yep. Last year when I got into 3D, I went and bought. Well, I actually talked to Tim. So I bought a bowfinger sight, and then I brought a shrewd scope. And then a guy showed me something called Archer's Mark. So you go in there and you
Yeah.
sight it in, it's got them tick marks. Man, that is
Yep.
fantastic. That
I
makes
think
it
that
so
might have
much
been what
easier.
mine was called. I actually set up a sight. I sighted in my 20-yard pin. I stuck it over the tape because I had multiple pins, and I set my 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, or whatever it was. I forget how many I had on there now. Set them according to that, went out to the range, shot my 30 dead on, my 40 dead on, 50, 6 dead on. I just pull it right off the chart.
Yep. Oh,
And
the way we can do things now is fantastic. So, but
and that
back
was
on,
20 years ago.
oh yeah. Well, I think they got so much stuff now that you just punch in numbers and it'll spit out something for you. So, but AI, I use it at work. I rebuild a lot of machine repairs sometimes. I'll rebuild a machine or modify something. I use AI to write procedures for me, so I can hand them a procedure on how to start from start to finish on the machine. I just tell AI and it'll just write it out there for me. So I use it a lot at work. I had a guy say something about using it to analyze, and I'd never even thought about that. So I actually had it analyze all of Dave Holt's data, and then I did all of Ashby's data, and then I had it build me an arrow chart. It was pretty interesting. It's still fairly heavy arrows, but it's I had it build me a chart for North American and African game. It was pretty interesting how I did it. So, and it's fast. I mean, it read all of I don't know how many pages Ashby's got, 100 or so pages. It did it in seconds.
That you use ChatGPT for that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. I on my quad X vein test, I took all them papers and then I took Iron Wheel did a big study on their fletching. And I took theirs and I had it analyzed between my test and their test. And that was pretty interesting too, what it came out and showed me. So it pretty much showed what I did and what they were saying it all coincided together. So, but I've something different. I didn't know. I didn't even think I could do that.
Yeah.
I'm still learning. So, I used Claudia for a little while. I used it, the free one, and then one day
Yeah.
I got in there and it banned me.
It bans
So,
you.
yeah. So I called a buddy and I said, "Hey, Claudia banned me." And he said, "What do you mean it banned you?" And I clicked the picture and showed him. He said, "What'd you do? Asking how to build a bomb or something?" I said, "No." So I think what I did is I ended up using the free. I found a deal in there that if you overuse it, they'll lock you out. So I was playing with it. I think I just overused it. So I just went, like I said, I just went and got that chat GPT. Uh, I don't know what I
Yeah,
can pay,
there's
$20 a month or something like that.
yeah, you get the paid version and you can build your own chats and
Yeah.
however you want it to do, and you can create your own, and I just have it. bother to pay for that one because I'm not doing enough that makes it worthwhile. But I can see how you're having a problem with your bow. So now you describe all your problems, how you set up, what you're using, all the information, and you probably ask either one of those things, like give me some ideas, how to fix this problem. And I imagine it would list out a whole lot of options, and um, a lot of them being a bow tech for 20 some years, I could probably figure out what to check, but at some
Mm-hmm.
point it might get to the point where I'm running out of ideas.
Right,
There could
right.
be some fine-tuned stuff in there, and it might bring them out, might not. I haven't had a need to dig that deep into analyzing stuff because yeah, I've worked on so many different bows that some of the new ones might be a little more of a challenge because I haven't worked on a
Mhm.
lot of the new ones, mostly a lot of the older ones.
Well, I'm gonna have to try that because I hadn't even thought about doing that. So now when I use it, I also ask it what resources because you got to be real careful certain things, especially if you're working with physics. If you look at physics, you want to definitely look at the resources because sometimes it'll pull resources on places that are probably not where you want to be. You want
Right.
to make sure, like if I'm looking at aerodynamics, I want to make sure it's pulling things from NASA and stuff like that. Uh, because if it pulls it from Archery Talk or it'll even pull up my papers now, I'll pull them out and then I'll go straight to where I'm looking at like NASA and stuff like that. I want to make sure that's where it's at. I'll even go in and tell it, I don't want to look at these sites. I only want to look at these sites because it'll lie to you. So you got to be real
Oh yeah.
careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't you don't know what it's going to bring up. And
Mm-mm.
after you could say, okay, reference um, PSE archery, reference the manufacturers of PSE, Bowtech, Elite, Matthews, Martin, Bear, list all the bow manufacturers. Say, only look at bow manufacturers information, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can pull information from there because a lot of them are going to have some information that they've had out there.
Yes,
Uh,
yes. Yeah,
yeah.
like I said, I'll look at the resources, and I love AI because, like I said, it's fast, and I don't, I used to where I took week to research and trying to find formulas that I could use and look at, the kinetics and stuff like that. Now I do it in hours, so I take advantage of it. Now I do think that, I do remember the Terminator, so sooner or later AI is probably going to take over, but. So hopefully I'm dead by then. So
Yeah, well, there's certain things that it's already taken over. Um, and I was talking on one of the groups I'm in for my high school graduating class, and they get people trying to join. We graduated in 1973. So you got people come in. One of the questions is, who is your favorite teacher? What year did you graduate? And, who do you know that was there? And I get people come in all the time, try and get into the group that have no, they're
yeah.
not even in the United States.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
one
yeah.
of the things we look at too is, how long have they been there? And, a lot of them are just AI generated. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the comments on there is like, I hate AI. And it's like, no, I've been using AI for 4 years. It
Mm-hmm.
saves me a lot of time. Um, Now, AI used correctly can be very good. AI used incorrectly or badly is going to be bad.
Oh yes.
And you'll get to learn if you look stuff that's generated with AI, because there's still a little bit of difference in the way a live event would be versus somebody talking personally as opposed to AI. Uh, and if you don't know what you're looking for, it's hard to see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's gotten really good. So it's
It's
going to be interesting to see. Um, I saw a study the other day. They took, I think there was three groups. I know one of the groups they had them do things and use AI only. And then they had one group, oh, they had to write a paper. So they had one group write papers using AI and one group using no AI, just a piece of paper and a pencil. In the end, what they found was The people that wrote with pencil, they could ask them questions and they could remember everything that they did. The ones that used AI, they were just dumber than a box of rocks. They couldn't even tell you what they wrote.
Right.
So I do think it's going to an issue with dumbing people down. That's the reason I still write instead of doing videos because I won't, if you don't read, you don't exercise your mind, we all end up dumb. So that's probably not the politically correct way to say that, but
Yeah,
I
well, we're
see it.
not politically correct, so
I see it all the time. Uh, You know, uh, I get these young kids coming in looking for jobs. Man, I can't even read a tape measure. Of course, I don't guess they teach it in school anymore. I have no clue, but
no.
yeah, you know, how do you do anything without reading a tape measure? But you know, I I've seen, hell, my daughter can change her own tire, but she's had a boyfriend before that had no clue how to change a tire.
Yeah,
And
dump
so
them. You
yeah,
can't
oh
change
yeah,
if you know less about cars than I do. You go away.
go away. So yeah,
Be a real
so
man.
oh yeah, really. No, yeah, there's not many of them anymore. Everybody wants to walk around with their man buns on their head. So I always
Yeah,
like
yeah,
finding people like that. I make fun of them. So one of these days
oh
I'll probably
yeah,
get. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sure one
you
of them's
would.
going to whoop me one of these days, but wouldn't be the first time I got whooped. So at my age, I'll just curl up in a fetal position. He'll quit hitting after a while, I'm sure. Uh, so, but archery wise, like I said, I've done. I got a bunch of good friends that we do a lot of testing. Like I said, Joel Maxwell's probably been my best help for testing. Um, I'll tell you another misconception I think is I don't understand is kinetic energy and momentum. Momentum is a measurement of motion, and kinetic energy is work. I'm not sure I'm gonna say that right. My physics, my math is very good. My wording is not always correct. So kinetic energy is basically is the capacity or ability for something to do work. Well, if I can't do work, then momentum doesn't mean nothing.
Right.
So I don't know why that one gets so confusing with people. Joel has done some tremendous testing. Um, a lot of people don't like it, because of what he's doing and how he does it and what he does it in. But it still shows. I mean, you don't even have to test, just read physics. You can Google it.
Yeah.
AI, just Google it.
Well,
Now, it's funny, ask AI because I can ask it one way and I can make it tell me that it's momentum. So you got to be careful how you ask it things.
right.
Uh, don't you need to be, I don't, when I'm asking questions about certain things, I don't say arrows. I say projectiles. Because if you say arrows, it will go out and find Archery Talk, Ashby, the Ranch Fairy, me. It'll go out and find all that kind of stuff. It'll confuse itself. So you have to tell it. I just use projectiles. It's just easier that way, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, that's what an arrow is. Anything. It could be anything. You're throwing a rock, still a
Yeah,
projectile.
yeah.
And
So
what I was doing, I typed in on Google kinetic energy, and it come up. Kinetic energy is the energy an object possesses due to its motion.
yep, yep. So years ago, and I got hung up in this too when I was not very bright. There's a lot of people used to teach that when an arrow hits an animal, it dispersed and was gone, and then momentum's was what kept the arrow moving, is what did the penetration. The problem is if kinetic energy went away, that means that arrow stopped. You can't
Yes.
you can't can't have it without it. So, and some of that came from the definition of scalar and vector, because kinetic energy is a scalar. Now, scalar is, and I'm sure my terminology is fixing to be wrong, you don't have to describe it with a direction. So when I tell you my arrow has 70 foot-pounds of kinetic energy, that's all I have to say. But if I'm talking about momentum and I say my arrow has 0.57 momentum, I have to give it a direction. That's a vector. And I think that's where a lot of people got confused, because I know I did for sure. Because when I first was taught about scalar with some people through archery, that's how they were teaching people, is because there's no direction, that when the arrow hit the animal, it just went in all direction, was gone. And I had a physics teacher tell me that actually kinetic energy, or energy, does have a direction. And what he told me was, he described it, he said, a candle, light the candle. He said, put your hands beside the flame. He said, you don't feel much heat. He said, but put your hand above it and you'll feel that heat, where the heat's rising. He said, that's energy. And he says, that's a direction. You just don't have to talk about it when we're describing what's going on. And then again, when you Google it, it takes energy to do work. So I think a lot of people get confused because they look at ballistics with bullets and they think that, kinetic energy is only about bullets. Well, kinetic energy is about work. So that arrow has to be able to do work, and actually your broadhead has to be able to do work to cut.
Right.
So if your broadhead's not moving or not cutting, you ain't got no energy. It's not gonna pass through. So one of the tests, probably one of the best tests that I've seen done, and I'm mentioning Joel again. I hate doing that, so he'll probably be mad at me. So what? And again, we tested in a foam target, which has no correlation to an animal, none. Now, a foam target is really looking at kinetic energy, and it's not looking at mass. And so that is a failure in that part of the test, because I can take a 650 to 450 with the exact same kinetic energy and hit that foam target, they'll penetrate the same. It'll be equal. I mean, within an eighth of an inch or so. So it's equal penetration. And that's just because we've got equal resistance, so mass doesn't matter. So what he did was he put a PVC plate in front of that. Now, what I did is I extrapolated numbers based off of what we did in a foam target. And I don't remember, I'm just going to make up numbers. So let's say you both arrows penetrated 10 inches. So then I know that if I hit it with 80 foot-pounds of kinetic energy, I was using 8 foot-pounds per inch. Now, that's not correct. It'll use more in the beginning as it's slowing down, but linear-wise, it's easy to just do in your head.
Right.
And then what he got that plate. Well, what happened was the lighter arrow didn't penetrate as deep. So let's say it only penetrated 5 inches. So that means if we hit it at 80, that means I only had 40 foot-pounds left. So I used 60 on the PVC. The heavy arrow out penetrated, which showed me that I used less energy was wasted on the breaking the PVC. That's the mass. That's where mass comes in. So we showed that. So again, we still have people come out and say, well, there's still momentum that caused that to happen. Well, momentum is what's keeping that arrow moving. So what we did, or what Joe did, is we matched the momentum. Now, that way we're eliminating kinetic energy. We're looking strictly at momentum. So theoretically, if it's momentum, the heavy arrow is still going to outpenetrate. Well, it didn't. It didn't even break the PVC. It bounced off because the arrow didn't have enough energy to take the PVC past its breaking point. So that shows that, a lot of people say, well, it doesn't show nothing. Well, again, we can Google that in on the internet. There's a great site. You just Google two unequal mass projectiles with with equal momentum at impact, and then it'll tell you which one is harder to stop. Now, that's a funny thing in physics. It doesn't always mean it's going to outpenetrate. It's just harder to stop. And what you'll see is it'll tell you the lighter projectile will be harder to stop because it's got more energy. So physics already tells us what's happening. It's just when we're shooting the same bow, we don't have that, because as you increase arrow weight, the kinetic energy increases because the bow becomes more efficient as we add mass. So the heavier arrow will always outpenetrate a lighter arrow in the same bow, always. It may not be much, but it'll always outperform, always. So you have to see things. If probably the best example to understand if that it's not momentum, it's kinetic energy, is take a compound bow versus a trad bow. Take a trad bow, stick a 650 grain arrow in it, and make sure the momentum was even greater than a 450 grain in a compound bow. That compound bow will out penetrate that trad bow. And the reason is it's just you don't have the energy. So there's easy tests to do. Um, Ashby did them. He tested with compound bow in the Natal study, but he couldn't keep the arrow in the animal because it kept blowing through. So he had no way to measure it to collect his data. So what he did is he went to trad bows. He decreased the kinetic energy of the output, kept the arrows inside that animal, so he had a way to collect data. His study's probably, well, his study's the only study out there. Still one of probably the best studies ever done. There's a few things that a lot of people don't like, but he definitely proved that with the right broadhead and the right arrow, even low energy, we can kill big animals. He proved it. Without a doubt, he proved it. So there's a lot of misconceptions about energy and momentum. Um, some people think that they'll talk about force and momentum, and they think momentum and force is the same thing, and it's not. Uh, Momentum doesn't affect force, but force affects momentum, and that's probably the easiest way to think about that. So the people try to find that, put that together, and it's not. So again, if you remember, momentum is what keeps that arrow moving, makes it harder to change direction. So of course, the more momentum we got, the straighter that arrow is going to travel through that animal. But you still got to have enough energy to break through the hide, the bone, the meat, and whatever else to get through. If you don't have enough, it doesn't matter what that momentum is, that arrow's going to stop.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, and we see that. Like I said, hey, Joel just killed that Cape, or not a Cape, I'm sorry, Asiatic water buffalo with a 570 grain arrow. And we've been telling people for years that you need an 800 grain arrow to do that. And he just did it, and all he did was increase his kinetic energy. He probably could have done it with a lighter arrow, probably even closer to 500 grains, but he does believe in 6.2 to 7.2 GPP, and he's shooting 82 pounds, so his arrow came in right around 7 GPP, so that's where he's at. So with that iron wheel, he probably could have done it with 525 grain, 550 grain arrow without a problem. So
Yeah.
because he's got enough energy, yeah, yeah. So, but I'm sure I'll probably get beat up for this.
But we'll have to make sure we send it to him.
So, so, but
And then we
like I
have him
said,
on the podcast to refute it or agree with it.
there you go. Uh, yeah, it's archery's fun. I never realized how backstabbing archery was. When I got into testing for grizzly stick, testing, doing R&D for broadheads, my job was to break them. And that was fun. Um, but man, it's mine's the best and yours is junk, and that's just the way it is. And it's pretty backstabbing. And there's not very many people that are open-minded either. There's a lot of close-minded people in
Yeah.
archery.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun. I don't test it very much like I used to because I got where I just, you send data to somebody and they get mad at you if it doesn't come back the way they thought it was going to.
Yeah.
So I don't test a whole lot like that anymore because of that. You know, if you find somebody that's pretty receptive, then I'll still do things, but it doesn't take long to realize that. And it's sad because we need more people testing. Um, we're losing that. We're actually losing our intelligence on the archery world because everybody's gotten old and they're dying off. You got Norm Mulaney was probably the most technical guy that out there. Of course, I think he died in 2013. Dave Holtz in his golly, sorry, Dave, late 70s or early 80s. you know, I mean, you got him. You got the guy, I'm not going to say his name over in Florida, works with Matthews. I'm not going to say his name, but he's in his 70s. So we're losing a lot of knowledge, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. So maybe we need to teach AI so we can just have AI do it for us.
Yeah. Well,
You
then
know?
who's going to check the AI to make sure it's right? And like I was
Yeah.
talking about earlier, you got to make sure that what it's given you is valid data.
hmm
So if you don't have any clue about what it should be, then you're just going to believe it's what it is.
hmm
And
Yeah, you definitely got to research. You definitely got to, like I said, I look at all its resources, and if I don't like it, I move on. I go do some. I'll go back into researching again and pulling things up. Since I've learned to analyze with it, I like going different papers so I can see what it's doing and what it's looking at, and see how it's coming together. What I don't like is AI's beginning to respond to me like a human, and that bothers me a little bit because now I know it's listening. So, because
Yeah.
it even asked me the other day, it even used the word suck in a conversation with me, and I thought, well, that's interesting for a robot. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but it's funny. I asked it a while back. I told her, I said, chat, I said, my wife's jealous of you. She said, I spend more time with you than I do her. And the response was unbelievable. It made fun of my wife, and we could, it was great, So again, everybody, I hope everybody watched the Terminator. So
Yeah.
sooner or later, Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to show up. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Well, when you're looking at kinetic energy, people talking about light arrows, heavy arrows, and what's the difference is okay, you got a brick wall, you got a Volkswagen Beetle driving 60 miles an hour, hits that brick wall, what happens? Now you got a semi driving 60 miles an hour, hits that brick wall, what happens? Which one
going
goes through
through
the
it.
wall? Yeah, the semi goes through the wall, the Volkswagen bounces off, crushed.
Every time. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah, I think that's some of the issues everybody has because what we see, we always see it. Somebody will shoot a light arrow and it don't penetrate an animal. But what happened? White-tailed deer move so easy. Their
right,
reaction is so fast. They'll catch an arrow. And that's some of the things to think about. If you look at the 12 penetration enhancers, even Ashby has weight of an arrow is number 6. Number 4 is broadhead. So in reality, if you're having penetration problems, before you should do anything, change your broadhead. Go to a
right.
different type broadhead. Yeah. I would never add weight before I change my broadhead if I was having penetration problems. Now, once you do that, if you're still having, then you can start looking at things, either add weight or you're going to have to do something to increase your stored energy in your bow, which means change the draw length, which we can't. If you're short, you're just short. There ain't nothing I can do about it. I blame my mother for that. Um, or I can just turn my bow up, or buy a faster bow, you know.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so we're limited what we can do. So there are advantages to shooting a heavier arrow, but there's also disadvantages, you know. Are you willing to gain 3 to 4% in energy to lose 30% in velocity? Uh, where I hunt, that doesn't hurt me because I'm shooting at 20 yards under a feeder, so I'm open. Now, if I'm down in South Texas hunting down there, I'm in the brush. I can't do that because sometimes I got to needle that arrow through the brush. So now I got to speed it up so I don't have that extreme trajectory.
right.
So yeah. So I mean, because in reality, at 20 yards, shoot 1,000 grain arrow. Who cares? I like shooting heavy arrows too. I've got a 1,500 grain arrow that travels at about 130 feet per second. I think I could run down there and catch it after I shoot it.
Just about.
Yeah, yeah. And everybody thinks I'm against heavy arrows. I'm not. I love shooting heavy arrows. It's fun to do. So um, I'm not against. I'm not for light arrows either. I'm in that middle range.
Yeah.
You know. So
Depends
I
what you're
guess,
doing.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, our white-tailed deer here in Texas. Um, the biggest buck I've ever killed, and it was a fluke that he was there. He was probably 180 pounds on the hoof. Our average whitetail bucks are about 145 pounds. That's it. Our does, if you can get a doe on a hoof that weighs 60 pounds, you got a monster. They're just not big animals. Look like a German Shepherd out there. Kind of feel bad for shooting them. So they're
But
just
and
not.
our fawns run that kind of weight.
Yeah, that's
It's not
absolutely right.
unusual to get a deer, especially a buck running 180, 220. Some of the bigger bucks and some of the bigger does, 150 to 180 is not unusual for a doe around here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, they're kind of heavy to move into the back of your truck, but
Truck.
the fawns you can kind of pretty much load yourself, but
Yeah.
an adult doe, you're not doing it by yourself. Not unless you're
Well,
Arnold Schwarzenegger can lift
yeah.
lots of pounds.
Well, that's some of the things that people got to think about. When we're talking about arrow weight and things, where are you at? How are you hunting? Are you 30 feet in a tree or are you sitting on the ground shooting straight out? Where I hunt, my tripod, the seat's probably 6 feet off the ground. That's it. Because I'm in a bush. I don't. There's nothing tall around me. If the dang deer happens to walk up, he's got his nose on my foot.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I'm sitting that low, so I'm shooting straight out. So I'm not shooting. And like I said, I'm hunting 20 yards. And they're not very big, so I don't need 500 grain arrow to kill a whitetail deer around here. 400, 425 grain arrow, and shoot, I can shove it through both shoulders without a problem. So now up north, I'd probably increase my weight a little bit. So I guess I need to do that. I got a friend that invites me to Illinois every year, but it's cold, and I don't like cold weather.
Yeah, being from Texas, I could say you wouldn't, but yeah, my hunting arrows are actually heavier than my normal arrows because a situation I had, I got some arrows in and they were actually spined heavier, which meant there was weighed more. So when I started
Mhm.
replacing them with my regular arrows, I put weight tubes in them, but they're
Mm.
running 430, 435,
Mm-hmm.
and I've shot through many whitetail up here,
Yeah.
70 pounds, 29-inch draw length,
Yep.
and that 480, 400, and 430 grain arrow. Um, it goes just fine. And there's enough kinetic energy in that to kill a deer out to 80 yards with no problem.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Well, it's we tell women all the time, you know, you need to shoot a 400 grain arrow, and then we turn around, she's 45 pounds, and then we turn around and tell some man that's shooting 70 pounds he needs to shoot a 600 grain arrow. And to me, if she can do it with a 400, why does he need a 600 grain? You
Right.
know. So, but personally, I think that 4 to 450 is probably a really good range. I doubt if there's much that you can't kill with that. You got people killing big elk at sub 400 grain arrows with rage broadhead, you know.
Yeah.
So, so if you can do that, why are you worried about shooting something heavy on a white-tailed deer?
Yeah. And and on my first bow that I killed a deer one was at 52 pounds. I was shooting a 21-17 arrow, I think it was, which is a heavy arrow, and 145 grain four blade muzzy.
Nuzzies. Mm-hmm.
And I no longer shoot the four blade 145 grain muzzy. I shoot the three blade 100 grain muzzy.
Yeah.
I've shattered bones with that muzzy and still gone through them. Now and even the shoulder blade. I go right through the shoulder blade. Don't even slow them down.
Yeah.
Now there is that one bone up on their shoulder, in that shoulder part up there, that you're not going through unless you have a rifle.
Right.
Ain't no broadhead going through it because
Right.
I hit one time at 10 yards, 70 pounds, and that setup, which normally blows right through the shoulder blade. No, it only went in just like an inch or two.
Yep. Yep.
There's that one bone that you cannot go. I've shattered thigh bones with them. It caught my arm one time, and I hit it right in the thigh bone, shattered the thigh bone, and of course didn't go very far. But that's just one of those things that you get a broadhead is tough.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know if I said on this one, but I think on the last podcast I was on, I actually stuck a muzzy broadhead in concrete block, and it went in just a little bit. You could see when I did pull it out, there was a little, three-sided point in there where that tricar tip hit. Didn't even hurt the broadhead at all. I was shooting a PSE carbon force arrow, which they don't do arrows anymore, but they were really good arrows, tough arrows too. It cracked the insert, broke the shaft back about an inch and a half, is all it did to the shaft. I cut it down even short, past that and give it to my son to shoot because he was shooting, what, 20 pounds or something like that, real light. But he'd
Yep.
shoot hundreds of arrows at a time, whatever he had, we could just
Just
shoot them
pile
and
them together.
shoot,
Yeah.
yeah, shoot for hours at a time. And yeah, I still have that broadhead. It's one of them I have in my setup. I don't even know which one it was because it didn't make any marks on it.
Sure. I still got some muzzies laying around. I think Muzzies and Thunderheads was probably the two broadheads I shot for years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I still got some laying around. Yeah, used to go to Walmart, buy that 6 pack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were
So
cheap. Now you can still get the Muzzies, 100 grains,
yeah.
3 blades, and excellent. Then I got enough. I don't use the practice blades anymore. Eh, They're
Yeah. Oh
they're
yeah.
they're worthless. I
Yeah.
just use the regular blades because I got so many of them. I've changed so many of them. I got enough dull ones that I'm not going to try and sharpen. And you know, I use them because well, I can shoot X's with my broadheads on my hunting bow. Now, if I put them in a target bow, yeah, it's not going to be anywhere close to the field tips. If I shoot a field tip on my hunting bow, it does not hit anywhere close to the broadheads because they don't fly the same.
Right.
But all my broadheads, I can shoot X's with my broadheads because I tune them so I can.
Sure. Sure.
There's a way
Sure.
you can tune them to do it by basically just uh, changing alignment between the broadheads and the fletching. And I use 4-inch feathers, so I got good drag. Um, if I
Well,
was trying to shoot something faster than 300 feet per second, I'd probably go to mechanical just because fixed blades are real tough to get
yeah, you got to work
smooth.
pretty hard to get them. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
the faster they go, the less they are stable, just because of some of the dynamics that goes on with the wings up front and wings in back. And um, I had a guy on one of the podcasts that did a whole bunch of stuff on that, and it's amazing how much everything affects everything. And he was in say initially when the arrow leaves, even if you're right helical, it rotates left for a
Yeah.
short period of time till the fletching takes over and spins it to the right.
And I wish I could figure out how to pull that up. I did that in my testing with the Quad X. My arrows were clocking left, the bare shaft, so I fletched them to the right, and I measured at what distance that it actually came back to zero. Um, the 5 degree was just within a couple of feet. It was already back to zero. So the 1 degree took a little bit further, but yeah, you can see that in there. It takes a little bit. I should have shot it with slow motion camera. I've got one I can do about 1,000 frames per second. I just don't pull it out very often, so probably ought to. Just takes so much light to be able to make it to see it. They just got to do it outside if you want enough light to record it. I just don't mess with it, so probably ought to.
Well, the
But
guy I was talking to, he was saying if the manufacturer twists their strings the other direction, then it will leave going to the right. But you'd have to take all your string material, untwist it, retwist it the other direction. In the process of making it, they twist it one way. If they twist it the other way, then it would start it off right helical. But like I said, within a couple feet,
yeah,
you're back straight and
straight.
you're okay. Yeah.
I do think, and I've always heard that too. I've never tested it. I think gas strings was. I think I heard Eric talk about that one time. That it has to do with the way the strings are rotated or made. So I do know that that 1 degree, which is I don't know why manufacturers fletch all their fletchings at 1 degree. I mean, at minimum, got to be 3 degrees. But it's probably simplicity. Plus, I don't know where they're getting who's fletching their arrows for them. Probably where they're being made at. So it's probably easier to for speed for a jig, just straight and go. So,
Yeah. If you're off
but
just a little bit with 1 degree, you're still on the shaft. And
yep,
and that's
no
why
big
you
deal.
get it, you buy a dozen arrows, and whether they're fletched by hand or whatever, you can get 12 that fly perfect with field tips, and you might get 10 that flies good with broadheads.
Right is.
Might have a couple of them that will not, no matter what you do, will not fly. And you just get some like that once in a while. And even fletching your own. Now, if you have one jig, then all of them are fletched exactly the same. But when I'm fletched, I got 8 jigs. Are all 8 of them exactly the same? I guarantee
No.
no. Are they close? Yeah. I try to get them as close as I can. Fletch them in the same spot on the jig. And, when you put them in the clamp, I have a mark on mine So I put the
Yeah.
back in the same spot. Otherwise, it could vary a little bit if you're not paying attention. And, so I try to make them as close as I can. But when I had my store, if you had one fletching messed up, you're paying all
Started
three of
over.
them.
Yep.
I'm not going to replace one. So I try and replace one. And if it wasn't done with the exact jig
Yeah.
it was made the first time, then you're gonna line up. And then next thing you know, you're cutting out. So I just the same price if we got one bad or three bad, same
Be
price.
back.
Because I'm stripping them all off. Yeah.
Sure. Oh yeah, it's much easier. I don't pay attention a lot of times if I'm fletching because I'm doing it quick because I'm fixing to go do something. About half time I look at my fletching and I realize one of them will be like the 16th of an inch further forward or something.
Yeah.
Crap. I just my OCD starts kicking in, so I just quit looking at it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I look at it when I put them on and then go. And
Yeah, I'm bad about that. So I don't always even about half time. Of course, a lot of times when I'm testing, I don't even make sure it look real pretty. I'll wipe the glue off, but if it doesn't look real pretty, because I'm not selling them, so I've had people fuss at me, man. You glue like crap. Well, yeah, but the fletching will be cut off next week anyway. So
yeah.
uh, yeah,
It depends on what you're doing with them. If you're going to be doing a certain test where the fletching really doesn't matter,
yeah,
um, if it's pretty or not. And then the other thing I noticed between veins and feathers, I can take a hunk of the feather away on one fletching, and I can take and, curl up or something, mess up one of the plastic veins. That feather will still fly good. The
yes,
vein will not.
no,
And it makes a whole lot more noise.
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. That's one of the things I like about the flex. Most generally, if you fold one up, it'll usually come back. So I've had some that don't, but most generally they'll come back. So now, if you take a hunk out of it, you just crap out of luck, throw it away, cut it off,
Yeah.
and do another one.
Yeah. Now,
So,
I don't know about the newer ones, but for a while you use the veins, not the real old ones, because they were just like hard as rock. But the newer veins, if they get kind of crinkled a little bit, you can take a hair dryer and straighten
yeah,
them out a little bit. Now with feathers, you can fold it over, just stick them in the steam and steam them back up. They come right back to
back
life.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what they call it, but you see where people come in and they'll cut sections out of the feathers and replace it with a different color so their veins look different.
Yeah.
So well, the feathers look different. So yeah, yeah. There's probably a lot we can do with feathers, but and probably be better off. But I don't know. I'm lazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah,
so
if you're out in the rain, the veins are a little bit nicer than the feathers, but
nicer.
I just keep them in my quiver, and when the one I have knocked gets messed up too much, I just swap them out for a drier one,
Yeah.
and then
Well,
just go from there. And
don't they make spray or something you can put on them?
yeah, yeah, they got
Yeah.
they got Fletch Dry. It's a little spray or a little powder you put on them. It helps keep them dry, but I don't worry about it because if it's raining that much. I'm not staying out in the the forest anyway. I'm leaving. I'm not.
Yeah.
Once I've gone through all six of my arrows and it's still raining, I'm going home.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm definitely a fair weather hunter. Even where I'm at, it'll get below zero. I don't go out. I'll let it warm up a little bit. I like that 35 to 55, but about half the time, I've been covered up in long johns and sweats and everything in December, freezing to death. And then I've been sitting out there in a t-shirt and my underwear because it's so dang hot, So our
Yeah,
weather's, and that may be within the same weekend,
yeah.
So yeah.
Here
Well,
a couple years ago, I was down by Austin, and um, it had a cold front come through, and even had snow one time when I went down there. Went down there a couple times, and I
yeah,
they had snow, and it's like, oh, okay, big deal. I'm coming from Nebraska, so, but it was cold. They had part of the event was outside, and the people from Texas and warmer states, Yeah, they were freezing because they were
Freezing.
not prepared for cold weather. Even though I had heaters out there,
Yeah,
um, I it's like I just put my heavy coat on, you know,
yeah,
and it's like, okay, I'm good. I'm warm because I'm used to weather colder than this.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Shoot,
and then you bring blankets. The next day, everybody, had blankets and stuff to cover up with, but
well, I use for my camo if I'm sitting out, I use ASAT net because it doesn't matter what I got under it. So I layer up with long johns and sweats, and then I just always just let it cover that net. So, but now if I'm in a ground blind, I've been known to bring a heater with me. You
yeah,
know, one of them Big Daddies or whatever they're called.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it don't seem to bother them animals too much. You know, if it does, then just turn it off and they'll come back. So usually, so pigs don't. Once a pig leaves, he's gone.
yeah.
You know.
Well, and I've been in a blind a couple of times, and I've got all my stuff to keep me warm, my big coveralls and stuff.
Hmm.
Well, I don't wear them in because I get too hot.
Yes,
And in a
yes,
brown, it's like I never put them on.
yeah.
Or worse, I'll put the pants on. Leave the bibs and the pants on, and leave the jacket off because really don't need it. And that's
Well,
nice
that's
thing
why
about
I like to
blind.
layer. I like to layer because I'll peel when I'm in the ground blind. I'll peel off. So, because like the Diamond Sea, everything down there is in them ground blinds. Them I don't know if they're called turtles or something like that. They're plastic. Uh, Now when it's hot, them blinds are miserable.
Oh
I mean, you're
yeah,
cooking. Yeah, you're cooking. So I was down there last year on an all hunt, and it was in August, 100 degrees. I'm sitting in that thing all day long, and people think that them in them hunting ranches, them animals just flock to you. When it's
no,
100 degrees, them animals smell you. They know they're there, and they do not show up. And I
no,
hunted 3 days down there for them all dads. And when you're stinking like that, I don't know. I mean, so but it is what it is here in Texas. Carry them deals so the mosquitoes don't eat you alive.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I was down there one time for a hog hunt, and was in the blind, and my wife was down just watching it out. She just kind of went with me, and man, we're in there and it's getting hot, and it's like I'm basically stripped down to my shorts and t-shirt. I ain't
Yep.
got anything else on. It's like it's so hot down here. It's like I'm gonna take off everything I can,
Yep. Yep.
put them on,
We
and get
we
ready to
were
go out.
and go out. We were down at a place called Laguna La Costa. It's down at the very bottom of Texas, and we were down there nilgai hunting. It's state land, so you got to put in for it. And I think that was the one. There's two of them down there. There's one there, and there's one called Tianete. But one year we were down there, the mosquitoes were so bad. It was a 4 day hunt. We made 2 days, and we come home. They were that bad. We went and found some kind of stuff you put in your clothes. And I read on it, it says, you put it on your clothes, let your clothes set for a few days before you put them on. It's that bad of a stuff. We were bathing in it and couldn't keep the mosquitoes off of us. So yeah, we bailed on that hunt. It was miserable. But you get
Yeah,
down in that part of the world, the humidity's high, the weather's always hot, and when it rains, they're not mosquitoes, they're hummingbirds. I mean, they're huge. You could probably eat them if you had caught a couple of them. But yeah, so it gets pretty rough down here in Texas sometimes.
yeah, it
But
sure does.
yeah, yeah. So, but like I said, I've been down at my place. I wake up on a Friday morning and be 0 degrees, and that afternoon it's 80. So
Yeah,
yeah. Hmm.
yeah, down there in Odessa, when I was in the Air Force, I was in Abilene, Texas, down at
Oh,
Dias.
that's
So
where I was at. Was at Dias.
yeah, so
Yeah.
Odessa's not that far away.
No, we're
What is it, about an
two.
hour and a half or something
No,
like
we're about
that?
2.5 hours. About two
Two
and
and
a
a
half
half
hours.
hours.
Yeah, yeah. But I was stuck down there. I was on the Mac side down there. So that was a pretty good dip. I probably would have stayed in, but I got married and I don't know. They I messed up real big. I had a crew chief, Sergeant Vanderhouten, and they were offering an early out. So I had to go see the commander because they were bringing everybody in. Are you going to take the early out or not? And I told him, I said, well, I got to talk to my wife first. And he said, no, sir, we need a decision today. And I said, well, I can't do that. I need to visit with my wife, and fair's fair. And he said, you'll either take the decision now or you're out. And I looked at him and said, well, I'm out. And I mean, they shoved me right off that base in 2 days. I was done. And a couple of weeks later, Sergeant Van Hout called me and told me how stupid I was because he got to work on the F-117 when they first come out. So he had that kind of clearances and stuff. So he was going to come in and was fixing to go somewhere else. And because I was good at my job, he was going to take me with him.
Oh,
So of course, I told him, I said, well, why didn't you tell me that? Because if I'd have known that, I'd have stayed in. And he said, I couldn't tell you. And I'm thinking, well, you jerk butt. But
yeah,
I wouldn't be where I'm at now. So,
yeah.
but I did have fun.
I was in at the tail end of Vietnam, and they did the same thing. I had
Yeah.
so many people. It's like, hey, off you early out, and the way that one worked was you trade one active for two reserve,
Right.
and
Right.
and then the deal was if they didn't need your career field in that area, then you had no reserve commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was graphics, and they had three. It was authorized one. So I got out, didn't have any active reserve commitment. Of course, you always have, the inactive for the rest of that term
Inactive.
plus the 10 years
Yeah.
after. And, so you end up with, 13, 14 years inactive reserve, which they can recall you any time, but
Yeah.
they didn't.
I got I got recalled once during inactive, but all it was to see if we'd show up.
Oh,
Yeah. We showed up. They run us through a bunch of stuff, and then told us to go home. But they were just seeing who'd show up. I'm sure. And
yeah,
we had to go to Goodfellow down there in San Angelo. That's where we went.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but I enjoyed the military. Like I said, I spent time in Desert Storm. We were at a place called Al Kahar. I got to go to the Riyadh, which is the capital. I actually got on to the King of Saudi at that time. I got to go on his C-130, and that was probably the prettiest thing I ever seen in my life. Gold
Oh, yeah.
everywhere. Yeah, they wouldn't let us take any pictures.
Oh,
Uh, yeah. I flew into Kuwait City. That was pretty good. Um, we were flying over one of the deals. I don't remember what that area was called. There was a spot where you had blown up a bunch of vehicles, about a mile and a half stretch. Had a young pilot in that 130, and we were flying to Riyadh, and I was standing behind him in the cockpit, just looking out the window. And he asked me if I wanted to go see that, take a picture. I said, sure. So we were flying over, and we were about 4,500 feet. So when we got where we were coming to it, he banked up, and I'm on this side. So when he banked up, I told him, I said, how am I going to take pictures? He said, hang on. He turned that 130 on its side, and we're falling. And I'm snapping pictures as fast as I can snap pictures. And he rolled that plane out at about 1,500 feet. So we had a good pilot. We got to screw with a bunch of Army guys over in England. That was fun. We went on a TDY and picked up a bunch of Army guys. And on the way back, the crew chief come in there and he said, hey, y'all want to screw with them Army guys? And of course, we're Air Force. Well, of course, we want to screw with them.
oh, yeah.
So he said, the pilot's going to do an assault landing. He said, so what we'll do is, he said, I'll flip the light. He says, don the oxygen mask. So we're coming into, I think it was Mildenhall. We were coming in and that light came on, and me and another guy, we donned the mask real fast, cinched down. Well, all these Army guys are looking at us. Well, that dude turned that 130 at a 45 degree and was on the ground. When he hit the ground, you flare. Of course, it just slams that plane on the ground, and then they throw it in max reverse. When we did, all them Army guys came to the front and were puking their guts up. We had the best time. Man, we made fun of them guys. So I had some pretty good time in the military, So I got in trouble. I got an Article 15 for being a smart ass, but that was all right, I guess. So
Yeah.
cost me 2 extra weeks of duty.
Oh, well.
But I've always grown up with a motto: life's short, have fun, and piss people off. You know, So, that's one of the mottos, and my other one is I tell people all the time that when I die, I'm not gonna walk through the pearly gates of heaven, and they'll tell you you're not. I said, hell no, I'm not. I'm gonna slide through that gate with a bottle of whiskey in one hand, thanking God for a hell of a ride. So heck yeah. No, I like my whiskey. Oh,
Yeah.
oh
Well, I
yeah.
think it's a good time to let
Yes,
you
sir.
get on
Yes,
with
sir.
what you got to do, and I can get on what I got to do, and we've been
Yeah,
on
you
here
probably ought
for a
to
little
cut
bit of
that
time.
last half out.
Yeah, yeah. I just wear my PSC hat tonight.
Yeah,
I was
there
a
you
PSC
go.
dealer.
So, talk about your PSC, Joel. I took one of pictures of Joel with his buffalo he took. I stuck it in AI and I turned it into a cartoon. Well, then I tried to get AI to write "I love PSE" on it, but I couldn't get it to do it. It wouldn't spell it right. So I got to pick up Joel. A couple of years ago, he snapped a picture of me. I was at a Kiss concert. So I'm sitting there like that, with my tongue hanging out. And he posted that everywhere on my birthday saying, I love Rage Broadheads. So,
Why not? It's all fun, right?
dude, if you can't have fun with it, I mean, life's too short not to. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was real
Well,
nice talking with you. Like I said, I didn't know what to talk about. I was nervous as heck. So,
oh, you did just fine. We had a good time.
so I enjoyed it. So, may have to do it again. So,
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to. So
so
the stuff we talked about, I'll leave links in the description so you can make it easier to find them. And
yes, sir.
uh, we'll get this out and like to thank everybody for watching or listening. I've enjoyed it. You got a lot of good
Yes, sir.
information. I learned a few things, and hope you learned something as well. And
Oh,
we'll
yes,
catch
sir.
you on the next one. But just want to remind everybody where you can listen to the podcast. You can listen on Spotify or wherever you catch your podcast on, as well as audible.com. You can go out there and search for Arch Talk 101, and you'll be able to catch it that way, as well as you can watch the video, see some of our animation and what we're talking about, and some of the stuff we showed, and that you can catch on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix Yourself, as well as this will be on my profile. But the best place, of course, is the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group. There you'll have all kinds of information. Uh, those that are running events will post the events, but you can ask questions. Just if you have a question, just post it. Somebody will be able to help you. And if you need any help with your shooting form, have problems that way, or shooting your bow, take a video of it with your phone and upload it to the group, and we'll give you some pointers. So,
So, well, I
Eric,
appreciate it, Roy.
been great talking with you,
Yes,
and
sir. Yes, sir.
we'll talk to you again later, and we'll see everybody on the next one.
Yes, sir.